All right. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to read Mysticism at the Beach, Evelyn Underhill, studying the nature of and development of spiritual consciousness. We're on, well, you can join here. I'm going old school. This is where I did my first video of the new man, I think. I know I was right here about 3 years ago. So welcome. All right, I'm going to start. The description about Evelyn Underhill and the book is in the description below on my YouTube. If you're listening to this somewhere else, then go there, and the PDF is there as well, and all this stuff. Hopefully this is pretty even. And welcome. I wanted you guys to enjoy this view, so I brought my backpack today with the book when I was walking. All right. There's no sunset. Let's see, the sun's up there. There you go. I forgot I have this all jerry-rigged on a stick. Okay, so Evelyn Underhill, this book is from 1910, so it's free copyright. And I've been a psychologist for the past 20 plus years, studied for 10 years before that, so I've studied this a lot. So sometimes I'll interject and make comments, but I only want to do that when I think it's helpful now. Live and learn, you know. But welcome. Take a moment to like this video. If you've been here before and you know and you like these videos, do that, because then other people will know to watch this. That's what they use until we learn this mystic way. All right, I'm so excited for us to be here. I forgot I was talking away from that mic the whole time, but now it's right underneath me. Okay, so to say that God is infinite is to we're on the chapter on the illumination of the self. I have a playlist, so you can start at the playlist if you want to do that, or else just join here. You know, I always just say join here. To say that God is infinite is to say that he may be apprehended and described in an infinity of ways. That circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere may be approached from every angle with a certainty of being found. Let's see if I can scoot over a little. Oh, there's the lifeguard. All right. Mystical history, particularly that which is concerned with the illuminative way, is a demonstration of this fact. Here in the establishment of the, quote, first mystic life, end quote, of conscious correspondence with reality, the self, which has oscillated between two forms of consciousness, has alternately opposed and embraced its growing intuitions of the absolute, comes for a time to rest. To a large extent, the discordant elements of character have been purged away. The dark night of the senses has been endured, though the more terrible night of the spirit is yet to come. This is in St. John of the Cross's book, The Ascent of Mount Carmel. I put an hour of it, like an hour of the most intense part. I have an app that reads to us, so since the book is from the 1500s or 1400s, I had Brian, my voice stream guy. We're like this. We're like best friends. It's a British AI voice, but it's pretty good. He reads all my old books to me. That's why I'm reading this now, because I like reading it out loud to people, you know? I mean, I like hearing it, so I wanted to give back, and I was going to read it anyway. But anyway, Brian will read you an hour of that. So I put that on my YouTube channel. It's Dr. Cheryl Meyer, if you're getting this from somewhere else somehow. I might put this on podcasts in the future. That's why I'm saying that. He talks about this, exactly this. Temporarily, at least, the mind has, quote, unified itself upon high levels and attained, as it believes, a perdurable consciousness of the divine and veritable world. The depth and richness of its own nature will determine how intense that consciousness shall be. Whatever its scope, however this new apprehension of reality at first appears to the illuminated self as final and complete. So she's talking about, the last chapter was the purgative way, and it lasted for about 3 hours, I think, or more. And so it talks about how divine love, God will burn out all of this stuff. Once you see a picture of God, I forgot, I'm talking not in my mic. Once you see an image of that, it's like you're looking at the sun, you just get this, you're in there, you're in this love, I have this, and it just wants to burn out everything that's not of love. And so you go with it, you go in that purgative way and let it all be burned, for the love of divine love of God. Because you want divine union, because the grace calls you to that. I was talking to my spiritual director briefly, and she's saying that you can't force the contemplative life. But St. John of the Cross is talking about, you can prepare. It's like if someone said in one of the books I read last night, early this morning, it was talking about if someone's given a field, he was quoting from a verse in the Bible. Someone was given a field, and then instead of just looking at it, they plowed it. It was in the Old Testament somewhere. It was an obscure verse, but it was really cool the way this monk used it, He was talking about how our flesh thinks we can just have things without cultivating it, But there is a cultivation, but God calls you to this cultivation. You wouldn't be here at this video unless some grace was calling you to seek this on a higher and deeper level. So anyway, whatever its scope, however this new apprehension of reality at first appears to the illuminated self as final and complete. As the true lover is always convinced that he has found in his bride the one rose of the world, so the mystic is sure that his quest is now fulfilled. In the first glow of his initiation into the, quote, perfect land, he can conceive no higher rapture than this, no more intimate adventure of the soul. Ignorant as yet of that final act of communion which overpasses the proceedings of the inward eye and ear, he exclaims with entire assurance, Beati oculi qui exterioribus quasi interioribus autem sunt intenti. I hope she translates that. No, it's from The Imitation of Christ, 1 part 3, caption I. 3 I's, caption. Anyway, I have that on my phone, but I'm recording with it right now. And look it up in English for us. I didn't know he wrote it in Latin. I read it in English. It's this right here. If anyone has taken Latin, I just took Greek, so I don't know this. You can write it in the comments for us. Thank you. Okay, and absorbed in this new blissful act of vision, forgets that it belongs to those who are still in via. Via is life. More experience is needed if he is to learn how many more celestial secrets await his discovery. How powerless is the heavenly food here given to satisfy his hunger for the absolute. How far removed from the true end of being is this basking in the sunbeams of the uncreated light, this revolving about the principle of things. Only the very greatest souls, the Galahads of the quest, learn this lesson and tread the whole of that king's highway, which leads man back to his source. Quote, for the many that come to Bethlehem, there be few that will go on to Calvary. The rest stay here in this earthly paradise, these flowery fields, where the liberated self wanders at will, describing to us as well as it can now this corner, now that, of the country of the soul. These flowers are so beautiful right here. I want to show you, because it's like I understand what she's talking about, because when I sat down here, I saw these. Look. I can't see what's on the screen because the glare, but they're really pretty, and it's like we could just stop at these flowers, but if God's calling us, divine love is calling us, it's important to be aware of that. It is in these description of the joy of illumination, in the outpourings of love and rapture belonging to this state, that we shall find the most lyrical passages of mystical literature. Here, poet, mystic, and musician are on common ground, for it is only by the oblique methods of the artist, only by the use of aesthetic suggestion and musical rhythm, that the wonder of that vision can be expressed. When essential goodness, truth, and beauty, light, life, and love are apprehended by the heart, whether the heart be that of lover, painter, saint, that apprehension can only be adequately communicated in a living, that is to say, an artistic form. That's why I always get song lyrics to teach my videos. I started calling myself a lyrical psychologist because someone told me that's what I am. And I'm like, oh, okay, that is what I am. It is. She knows. But anyway, because what Evelyn Underhill just said, art is alive, it's living, and so it captures this vibrating atoms of love, it's more than atoms. God is like formless. Here then genius and sanctity kiss one another, and each in that sublime encounter looks for an instant through the other's eyes. Hence, it is natural and inevitable that the mystic should here call into play all the resources of artistic expression, the lovely imagery of Julian of Norwich, right, and Mathilde of Magdeburg, Suso's poetic vision, St. Augustine's fire and light, the heavenly harmonies of St. Francis and Richard Rolle. Symbols, too, play a vast part, not only in the description, but also in the machinery of illumination, the intuitions of many mystics presenting themselves directly to the surface mind in a symbolic form. We must therefore be prepared for a great variety and fluidity of expression in such writers as have tried to communicate to us the secret of this state of consciousness. We must examine and even classify, insofar as this is possible, a wide variety of experience, some which is recognized by friends and foes alike as purely mystical, some in which the operation of poetic imagination is clearly discernible, some which involves psychic phenomena and other abnormal activities of the mind. There is no use in being frightened away from investigation by the strange and apparently irreconcilable aspect of these things. The wounds of truth are as faithful as the wounds of a friend. Lifeguard break. Anyway, now there are three main types of experience which appear over and over again in the history of mysticism, and always in connection with illumination, rather than any other phase of mystical development. I think that they may fairly be regarded as its main characteristics, though, of course, the discussion of them cannot cover all the ground. In few forms of life is the spontaneity of the individual so clearly seen as here, and in few is the ever-deadly process of classification attended with so many risks. How can you put this in a box? How can you even describe it? But she's already given me so much, Evelyn. I hope she has for you as well, in understanding the spiritual path, that Lewis Carroll says in Alice in Wonderland, he says, I found the quote again the other day. It says, yes, I'm mad. and you are too, absolutely bonkers, or something like that. And it's like, all of the best ones are, you know, because to other people in their natural mind, they don't understand this, right? The three characteristics which I propose to consider are these. 1. A joyous apprehension of the absolute, that which many ascetic writers call the practice of the presence of God. This, however, is not to be confused with that unique consciousness of union with the divine, which is peculiar to a later stage of mystical development. She talked about this in the last video, I remember, if you want to watch that too. The self, though purified, still seems to itself to exist as a separate entity. It is not immersed in its origin, that she capitalized that, but contemplates it. This is the betrothal rather than the marriage of the soul. Wow. So when you're practicing presence and you're not in union yet, you can go through the purgative way where it's cleaning out all of this old dross, and you get moments of clarity and bliss and zen and that peace that passes all understanding that Jesus talked about. He says, I give you a peace not of this world. You know, and then Paul later on in Philippians wrote, this is the peace that passes all understanding, but that doesn't mean you're in union with divine love yet. That's something that St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross talk about. I'm sure she'll talk about it too. Okay, so first was the joyous apprehension of the absolute. The second one is this clarity of vision may also be enjoyed in regard to the phenomenal world. The actual physical perceptions are strangely heightened, so that the self perceives an added significance and reality in all natural things, is often convinced that it knows at last, quote, the secret of the world. I just posted a video, I have to say this, just so you get a sample of this. I don't need to talk about my videos. It's just, I did one of, I kept hearing God say to us, like, I want to hold your hand. I want to hold your hand. I want to be close to you. And so I did that Beatles cover of I Want to Hold Your Hand. And the whole time when I'm recording it and practicing, I practiced it for like 3 hours that day, I was just in this mystical state, like seeing all these deeper truths about the intimacy that God calls us to, that's like I had missed all my life, and so many of us miss altogether, you know. And so it's like, I put it up there and it's like this 36-second video where I did the whole song, and it's just like, I don't know if anyone's gonna get what I'm getting, you know. It looks so different, you know, when you make the painting or you make the song, and it's like, what I was conveying, you know, it's like when a kid, I remember one of my kids painted, they made this drawing at school with markers and stuff of this ladder, and I was just like, what is that? And they said, it's a ladder with angels that go up and down on it, and I had never told them the story, so it's like, but it was a kid's drawing, you could tell it was like a 5-year-old's drawing, but it was still conveying this higher thing. It doesn't matter how poorly it's done. I just put it out there and hope that some people will feel the deep presence of God, you know, because I just want everyone to know that, so that, I don't know, I think that's part of why we're given gifts here on this earth. We're all different parts of the same body, so we're meant to have our voice. The higher one, you know, and I don't know always how to distinguish that. We'll see anyway. This clarity of vision may also be enjoyed in regard to the phenomenal world. The actual physical perceptions are strangely heightened, so that the self perceives an added significance and reality in all natural things, is often convinced that it knows at last the secret of the world. In Blake's words, quote, the doors of perception are cleansed, so that everything appears to man as it is infinite. So it does. It's like you see this ocean and you see how expansive it is and how it looks like it goes on forever and how it's part of the divine love. These girls are playing volleyball. I just don't know if it's if it's interfering with our sound. oh well, if not, I mean, if it is, then we just get to hear the ball going back and forth at the same time. It's part of this universe. Plainly, these two forms of perception represent that dual intuition of a transcendent, immanent reality, that stretching of consciousness in two directions until it includes in its span both the world of pure being and the world of becoming, which we found to be one of the distinguishing marks of the mystic type. 3. Along with this twofold extension of consciousness, the energy of the intuitional or transcendental self is enormously increased. The energy of the intuitional or transcendental self is enormously increased. I did a video today. I just posted it this morning. So if you want to go back by the time this posts, because I have a lot of these to post, then it just says developing your intuition. It's just 12 minutes, 12 seconds. But anyway, I have a few of those videos. Along with this twofold extension of, I'm going to read that part again, of consciousness, the energy of the intuitional or transcendental self is enormously increased. The psychic upheavals of the purgative way have tended to make it central for life, to eliminate from the character all those elements which checked its activity. Now it seizes upon the ordinary channels of expression, and frequently shows itself in such forms as A. Auditions. Like I was saying, I get songs and I hear things. I'm not just talking about me to stop, but anyway. B. Dialogues between the surface consciousness and another intelligence which purports to be divine. C. Visions, and sometimes D. in automatic writings. This automatic activity of those growing but still largely subconscious powers which constitute the new man increases steadily during the whole of the mystic life. So I was taught you're not meant to search for those extra capabilities or anything. They just, Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." You get purified, and it's like the window of your soul. St. John of the Cross talks about this in that one part of the book that I put on my YouTube channel. It's just, he talks about, I think it's in that part, that it's like a window, and like God is like the sun, and the more that is cleared out, the more clearly God just shines through that window. It's not like the window has special powers, it's just more cleared out, so that God can shine through it. Divine love can. Anyway, illumination then tends to appear mainly under one or all of these three forms. So the joyous apprehension of the absolute, the clarity of vision in the phenomenal world, and along with that, the energy of intuitional transcendental self is enormously increased. She says by degrees it goes bigger, it grows more and more. You just learn how to become more and more detached from, you're not watching TV as much, or you're just in more stillness. You just become more still, and it's be still and know that I'm God, Become more still inside. You've learned to detach from your mind chatter and not put so much weight in it, or the old programs or the triggers, It's like you notice, you're just like, those are just a waste of my time to give that energy again, and to recycle and rehash those old patterns. Like, you become more aware. It's just like if you became really good at tasting wine and knowing good wines, you just you're not attracted to the worst tasting ones, the less fine ones. Anyway, I hope that helps you. Illumination then tends to appear mainly under one or all of these three forms. Often all are present, though, as a rule, one seems to dominate the rest. The character of each case will be conditioned by the self's psychic makeup, its temperamental leaning towards pure contemplation, lucid vision, or automatic expression, emanation or eminence. Emanation with an E-M-A-N-A-T-I-O-N, or eminence, I-M-M-A-N-E-N-C-E. The metaphysical, artistic, or intimate aspects of truth. The possible combinations between these various factors are as innumerable as the possible creations of life itself, with a capital L, right? In Brother Lawrence's Practice of the Presence of God, which I really recommend that. That's free online as well. There's, okay, so one of my first videos was one called Voice Dream, and I don't get paid by them or anything, but I just talk about, my uncle taught me this app, like I was talking about. I got the Voice Brian that reads all my PDFs, so you just pay one time for it, and then it reads all your PDFs for free, all these old ones. And then in that video, I'm just naming it because in the description of that video, I have a list of like the top 10 books that influenced C.S. Lewis's spiritual life, or his whole life, he said. And then I have a bunch of other classic books that you can go to. It's called the Catholic or Christian Classic Ethereal Library, ccel.org, I think, or .com, I'm not sure, but the links are in that video. It's called, if you look up Dr. Cheryl Meyer and Voice Dream, it's just the Voice Dream reader. You don't need to buy any of the other stuff. You don't need to buy anything, but it reads all these books for you, so it's like, anyway. So he says in Brother Lawrence, she says, in Evelyn Underhill says, in Brother Lawrence's Practice of the Presence of God, in St. Bernard's Converse with the Word, in Richard Roll's State of Song, when, quote, sweetest heavenly melody he took, with him dwelling in mind, we may see beautiful expressions of the first form of illuminated consciousness. Jacob Boehme is rightly looked upon as a typical example of the second, which is also found in one of its most attractive forms in St. Francis of Assisi, Suso, and St. Teresa of Avila, perhaps may stand for the third, since in them the visionary and auditory phenomena were peculiarly well marked. The preliminary study of each characteristic in order will help us to disentangle the many threads which go to the psychical makeup of these great and complex mystic types. The rest of this chapter will then be given to the analysis of the two main forms of illuminated consciousness, the self's perception of reality in the eternal and temporal worlds. The important subject of voices and visions demands a division to itself. And also, she'll probably talk about you have to have lots of discernment, but God will train you on the way. Divine love will train you on the way. But it's important to have discernment because, it says that the devil can appear as an angel of light, and just draw you off. Like if you kept looking at this flower that I showed you a little earlier and stayed there. It's what happened in the Narnia book, Silver Chair. The prince wanted vengeance because his mom was killed, just like C.S. Lewis has lost his mom, Tolkien lost his mom and his dad. But anyway, Lewis lost his mom, and so in 2 of his books, the mom dies, or the mom's just not there. And 3 of the Narnia. In The Horse and His Boy, The Silver Chair, and in The Magician's Nephew as well. 3 boys don't have their moms. Because he didn't, you write from what you know. But anyway, but in The Silver Chair, I'm remembering right now, Prince Caspian, oh sorry, I forgot I clipped this back on. Prince Caspian goes and looks to get revenge for his mom from the serpent, but the serpent turned into the Lady of the Green Kirtle, this woman that's dressed in this green flowing dress, and she, casts a spell on him and takes him to the underworld, and it's kind of like Persephone in Clash of the Titans. Isn't that her name? Anyway, it's sort of like that, but and then she's going to try to rule, but so anyway, he gets this vision and he thinks he's going for one reason, but then he's stuck. I don't remember how many years he was down there, maybe 9-10 years or more, It's Rillian. Sorry, it's Prince Caspian's son, Rillian. I'm just remembering now. But anyway. Okay, so, Prince Caspian, Rillian. I'm just remembering now. But anyway, okay, so, Prince Caspian, Rillian. I'm just remembering now. But anyway, okay, so, Prince Caspian, Rillian. I'm just remembering now. But anyway, okay, so, I learned so much about how to walk this path from reading and rereading all the Narnia books in my childhood and adulthood a lot. If you want to know, they really do help you to understand what's going on. In story form, they help you. I listen to the Lord of the Rings all the time as well, because Tolkien was just so aware of so much of this. I mean, he knew 50 languages fluently, is what my C.S. Lewis professor said to us. The consciousness of the okay, so this is section 1 of this chapter. The consciousness of the absolute, or sense of the presence of God. This consciousness, in its various forms, is perhaps the most constant of all the characteristics of illumination. And it is this which makes it, for the mystic soul, a pleasure state of the intensest kind. I do not mean by this that the subject passes months or years in a continuous ecstasy of communion with the divine. Intermittent periods of spiritual fatigue or aridity, the last vestiges of purgation, the ongoing gloom of the dark night, all these may be and often are experienced at intervals during the illuminated life, as flashes of insight, indistinguishable from illumination, constantly break the monotony of the purgative way. You know, God gives you constellations and desolations. Saint Ignatius of Loyola really talks about this, what to do, how in your constellations, he says, like, write things down, you know. And Saint Francis de Sales, I think that's him, I think it's him that talks about in the Imitation of Christ, or Absolute Surrender to Divine Love, that book. I'm forgetting the author in this moment. Anyway, he says to gather bouquets, like write down bouquets of flowers. It's like, I have Evelyn Underhill's prayer book, and she has these prayers listed from all these different years that she wrote down, and she kept them in one prayer book by her bed, I think. You know, her own personal prayer book. And so you can write down things, but even when you look at them in a later state, when you're in a very dry state, it just doesn't even make sense to you. Even videos I look at, like, what was I talking about? Because I was in an illuminative state when I made it. Anyway, but they're all worth, you know, they can encourage me when I go back to those oftentimes. You know, like your own journals can do that. I'm just using that as an example. But a certain knowledge of this personal life omnipresent in the universe has been achieved, and can never be forgotten, though it be withdrawn. The spirit stretching towards God declares that it has touched him, and its normal condition henceforth is an acute and joyous consciousness of his presence, with many privy touchings of sweet spiritual sights and feeling, measured to us as our simpleness may bear it. You know, you can't force it, like my spiritual director was saying. It's a grace. You can prepare your heart for it and keep letting go of your outer senses and stop being pulled here and there by them. But anyway, where he prefers less definite or more pantheistic language, the mystic's perception may take the form of harmony with the infinite. The same divine music transposed to a lower key. This, quote, sense of God is not a metaphor. Innumerable declarations prove it to be a consciousness as sharp as that which other men have, or think they have, of color, heat, or light. It is a well-known, though usually transitory experience in the religious life, like the homing instinct of birds, a fact which can neither be denied nor explained. It's just like Narnia. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. And when it wasn't there, they made fun of Lucy. You know, Edmund did. It's like, you know, maybe we'll find it in other closets in the house, you know, and mocked. Just like they mocked Jesus when he said, I think it's in Matthew where he raises the girl from the dead, you know, and he lets the parents go in there, and Peter and James and John, I think, and them only. And he says to the mourners, don't mourn, she's just sleeping. And they mocked him to scorn, they said, you know, and then he raised her from the dead. So there, no, it's like Jesus had the last word. He rose from the dead, you know. But whatever, you have to just deal with the mocking and the temporary. That's just what comes with this. It says, with persecutions we get this. But what does it matter? What does it matter what is it Jesus said is to a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And Kierkegaard pointed out the other. It's like, so what if you lose the whole world but you gain your soul? Then what have you lost? Absolutely nothing. Anyway, how that presence is felt may better be known by experience than by any writing, says Hilton. For it is the life and the love, the might and the light, the joy and the rest of a chosen soul, like the joy and resting, the rest of a chosen soul. And therefore he that hath once truly felt it cannot forbear it without pain, neither can he choose but desire it. It is so good in itself and so comfortable. He cometh secretly sometimes when thou art least aware of him. God, it's a capital H. There was an ellipsis. He cometh secretly sometimes when thou art least aware of him, but thou shalt know him full well ere he go. For he wonderfully stirreth and mightily turneth thy heart into the beholding of his goodness, and then doth thy heart melt delectably as wax against the fire into softness of his love. That's like, I wanna hold your hand. All right, so modern psychologists, modern in 1910, right, have labored hard to establish the pathological character of this state of consciousness, to find a place for it in the hospitable domain of psychic hallucinations. Yeah, The mystics, however, who discriminate so much more delicately than their critics between true and false transcendental experiences, never feel any doubt about the validity of this, quote, sense of the presence. Even when their theology contradicts it, they refuse to be disturbed. Thus St. Teresa writes of her own experience with her usual simplicity and directness. Quote, in the beginning it happened to me that I was ignorant of one thing. I did not know that God was in all things. And when he seemed to me to be so near, I thought it impossible. Not to believe that he was present was not in my power. Oh, I see. Okay, not to believe that he was present was not in my power, for it seemed to me, as it were, evident that I felt there his very presence. Some unlearned men used to say to me that he was present only by his grace. I could not believe that, okay, because, as I am saying, he seemed to me to be present himself. So I was distressed. A most learned man of the order of the glorious patriarch St. Dominic excuse me, delivered me from this doubt, for he told me that he was present, God, with his capital H again, and how he communed with us. This was a great comfort to me. Now, actually, when I woke up at 4 in the morning this morning from a bad dream, and so I was reading, and this elder Joseph, the Hezekiahist from Mount Athos, I think, he said that he quoted the verse, I think it was in 1 Thessalonians 5 maybe, but it quoted the verse where it says God is we live and breathe in his very being. And so it's reiterating this, because you want to check these things with scripture. It's like we live, move, and breathe in the being of God. So all of this, the Native Americans explain it so well. They say we're in the mind womb of God. We're in God's dream right now. So all of this, if you think about it, is made out of the substance of God. Not in all the same degree, because it says specifically that God breathed into Adam. And so there's something of a soul. There's something more that he's indicating in that breath, because after Jesus' resurrection, he breathed on the disciples, the ones that were there. So I don't know what happened with St. Thomas. I'm sure something, he got it later when he touched his side and his hands. I don't know if he breathed on him. Anyway, I think it's the first time he breathed, when the locked doors were there. It's really cool to read. Because Aslan will breathe on Lucy and Susan in the book Prince Caspian. He breathes on them and gives them courage. Courage, dear heart, In many temperaments. So that was a comfort to her. Again, an interior peace and the little strength which either pleasures or displeasures have to remove this presence during the time it lasts of the three persons. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Again, an interior peace and the little strength which either pleasures or displeasures have to remove this presence during the time it lasts of the three persons, and that without power to doubt of it, continue in such a manner that I clearly seem to experience what St. John says, that he will dwell in the soul. I think this is still Teresa of Avila talking, because it's a quote from her, from someone, that he will dwell in the soul, and this not only by grace, but that he will also make her perceive his presence. Okay, that's St. Teresa's strong eminental bent comes out well in this passage. Let me see if she says what passage that is. No. I think we're just supposed to know these verses or something. Okay. Oh, I guess I gotta leave this here, but all right. I can't control everything, but I try to. I accidentally pushed the volume button and it stopped the recording. So, all right, we're back. I'll just have to edit this one. Anyway. So, St. Teresa's strong eminental bent comes out well in this passage, that he will dwell in the soul, and this not only by grace, but that he will also make her perceive this presence. The soul is her, all right. Such a sense of the divine presence goes side by side with the daily life and normal mental activities of its possessor, who is not necessarily an ecstatic or an abstracted visionary, remote from the work of the world. Like I always say, my day job is a psychologist, Let me lift this up a little bit. So we can all be still in the world. We're just not of it. Such a sense of the divine. Okay, so it is true that the transcendental consciousness has now become once for all his center of interest, that its perception and admonitions dominate and light up his daily life. Oh, that's just reminding me of the song, Light of the World, Shine on Me, love is the answer. Shine on us all, set us free, love is the answer. Todd Rundgren is his name, I think. That was before my time. But I heard it at a rave a long time ago, and then I was like, what is this song, Maybe I heard it all those years ago so that we could just hear it just now, because it meant something to someone that's listening right now. It's so cool how that works, because the Holy Spirit, God is above all time, divine love is above all time. So divine love might have inspired that DJ, who was my friend for a little while after that, because I was like, what is that song? And might have inspired that DJ to play it that night so that I'd hear it over 20 years ago and just sing it right here for you. That's how this works. That's how cool this is. I'm so glad. Like, if you want to comment, then please do, if you know that song or that means something to you, so that other people can see how God is just so tender and so sweet, Maybe I was meant to push the volume button so that the camera's back on me, because maybe I wouldn't have sang that song unless I accidentally pushed that, God uses all the material we give him, so we can have all the biggest mess and he can use it as fertilizer. I say, here's more fertilizer, God, clean me out again, right? Just give it to God and he can make, God is beyond he, but the I am can make good of it, Such a sense of the divine presence goes side by side with, okay, so here we talked about that. It is true that the transcendental consciousness has now become once for all his center of interest, that its perceptions and admonitions dominate and light up, like light of the world, right? His daily life. The object of education in the Platonic sense has been achieved. His soul has, quote, wheeled round from the perishing world to the contemplation of the real world, the brightest part thereof. Remember, Plato talks about this is the Shadowlands. That's why the movie about C.S. Lewis is called Shadowlands, because he talks about we're in the Shadowlands. Once they get to the real Narnia, at the end in the last battle, they can see all the best parts of Narnia, and England were there. They could see England from Narnia. My brother was talking to me about telescopic view, how I won't say, but what if early man, early beings had telescopic view like they did in, I said, oh yeah, C.S. Lewis talked about that in the voyage of in the last battle, and he's like, oh, we probably took that from Tolkien, they were like this. They went to the Eagle and Child pub all the time in Oxford. I got to go there. I walked from Tolkien's house to there. My poor kid. I made him walk because I really wanted to walk by Tolkien's house. And he was young. I think he was 11 at the time. They just don't always want to walk that much. But anyway. In many temperaments of the unstable or artistic type, this intuitional consciousness of the absolute becomes ungovernable. It constantly breaks through, obtaining forcible possession of the mental field and expressing itself in the psychic phenomena of ecstasy and rapture. In others, less mobile, it wells up into an impassioned apprehension, a flame of love. That's the name of one of St. John of the Cross's books. Something, flame of love. Anyway, in which the self seems to, quote, meet God in the ground of the soul. This is, quote, pure contemplation, that state of deep orison in which the subject seems to be, quote, seeing, feeling, and thinking all at once. By this spontaneous exercise, almost all of my skate videos, I'm just saying, if you want to see this, you can go there. On Instagram, it's SK8being. I'm just being on my skates. Now I have a concussion, so the last 2 months I haven't been able to skate at all. That's why I've had more time out here by the ocean, because I'm walking now. But I'm by the ocean when I skate, but you just get that feeling. I skated in one of these videos, so you see. But usually all of the videos that I do on skates, I'm just in that present state, and I just want to share it. That's the only reason I'm making a video. It's like if you can go to Mount Athos, only men are allowed on that mountain, but there's a monastery in Arizona called St. Anthony's Monastery. And if you're around other ascetics, like on Mount Athos, that have had these experiences, that consciousness can just get shared over to you. That's why I do it, not because I'm in just this great state of, I'm not saying, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I just always want to share that love feeling, This is pure contemplation, that state of deep orison in which the subject seems to be seeing, feeling, and thinking all at once. By this spontaneous exercise of all his powers under the dominion of love, the mystic attains that vision of the heart, which, more interior, perhaps, than the visions of dream or ecstasy, stretches to the full those very faculties which it seems to be holding in suspense, as a top sleeps when it is spinning fast. The top does, and then the bottom part's going. It's so weird. Anyway, ego dormio et cor meum vigilat. Okay, she does not. Ego means I. Dormio is sleep. Et cor, I don't know, maybe it's the same thing, something like the top, right? This act of contemplation, this glad surrender to an overwhelming consciousness of the presence of God, leaves no sharp image on the mind, only a knowledge that we have been lifted up to a veritable gazing upon that which eye hath not seen. That peace which is beyond this world. Saint Bernard has left us in one of his sermons a simple, ingenious, and obviously personal account of such privy touchings, such convincing but elusive contacts of the soul with the Absolute. Now bear with my foolishness for a little, he says, for I wish to tell you, as I have promised, how such events have taken place in me. It is indeed a matter of no importance. That's what I'm saying. It's not important how, but I just want you to know it so you can recognize it in yourself. But let's listen to his, Saint Bernard's. But I'm not comparing myself to a saint. But I put myself forward only that I may be of service to you. And if you derive any benefit, I am consoled for my egotism. If not, I shall but have displayed my foolishness. Yes, I understand this. I confess then, though I say it in my foolishness, that the Word, capital W-O-R-D, has visited me, and even very often. But though he has frequently entered into my soul, I have never at any time been sensible of the precise moment of his coming. I have felt that he was present. I remember that he has been with me. I have sometimes been able even to have a presentiment, that he would come, but never to feel his coming nor his departure, for whence he came to enter my soul, or whither he went on quitting it. By what means he has made entrance or departure, I confess that I know not even to this day, according to that which is said, nessus undi veniat aut quo vidat. I don't know, anyway, but nescis unde veniat autquo vadat. You have the power to go look that up while I'm talking, if you can listen to YouTube videos at the same time. Not that I recommend, the Zen always say only do one thing at a time, but you can look that up, but I don't want to look it up while I'm making the video, and then I often forget afterwards because the video was an hour long, and I have other videos and I'm just posting. But if you remind me, it's on page 293. Just ask, will you look up page 293, and then I'll look it up online as well, if I see the comment, which I usually do these days. Nor is this strange, because it is to him that the psalmist has said in another place, Vestigia tua non cognoscentur. It is not by the eyes that he enters, for he is without form or color that they can discern, nor by the ears, for his coming is without sound, nor by the nostrils, for it is not with the air, but with the mind that he is blended. By what avenue, then, has he entered? Or perhaps the fact may be that he has not entered at all, nor indeed come at all from outside, for not one of these things belongs to outside. Yet it has not come from within me, for it is good, and I know that in me dwelleth no good thing. I have ascended higher than myself, and lo, I have found the Word above me still. My curiosity has led me to descend below myself also, and yet I have found him still at a lower depth. If I have looked without myself, I have found that he is beyond that which is outside of me, And if within, he was at an inner depth still. And thus have I learned the truth of the words I have read, in ipso inem vivimus et movimur et sumus. It's from St. Bernard, Cantica Canticorum, Sermon IXXIV. Anyway, it'd be great if I knew Latin. Remember that one time a few videos ago when the woman spoke really, it was like Spanish from Spain, so to me it sounded Italian because I live in California, so I hear a lot of Spanish from Mexico. And so I asked her, do you speak Italian? But she read what we had just read like 1 minute before in Italian for us. It was so cool. It was like the ascent. It was talking about the ascent up a mountain or something, and a tree. It was so cool. Anyway, such a lifting up, such a condition of consciousness as that which St. Bernard is here trying to describe seems to snatch the spirit for a moment into a state which is hard to distinguish from that of true union. That is what the contemplatives call passive or infused contemplation, or sometimes the horizon of union, a brief foretaste of the unitive state, often enjoyed for short periods in the illuminative way, which reinforces their conviction that they have now truly attained the absolute. It is but a foretaste, however, of that attainment. The precocious effort of a soul still in that stage of enlightening, the equivalent of illumination, which the Theological Germanica declares to be, quote, belonging to such as are growing, end quote. This rather fine distinction between temporary union and the unitive life is perhaps best brought out in a fragment of the dialogue between the soul and self in Hugh of St. Victor's mystical tract De Ara Anima. The soul says, good, it's in English, and then I'll wrap up. Tell me, what can be this thing of delight, that merely by its memory touches and moves me with such sweetness and violence, that I am drawn out of myself and carried away, I know not how. I am suddenly renewed, I am changed, I am plunged into an ineffable peace. My mind is full of gladness. All my past wretchedness and pain is forgot. My soul exalts, my intellect is illuminated. My heart is afire, my desires have become kindly and gentle. I know not where I am because my love has embraced me. Capital love, right? Also, because my love has embraced me, I seem to have become possessed of something, and I know not what it is, but I try to keep it, that I may never lose it. My soul strives in gladness, that she may not be separated from that which she desires to hold fast forever. Excuse me. As if she had found in it the goal of all her desires. She exalts in a sovereign and ineffable manner, seeking not, desiring not, but to rest in this. Is this then my beloved? Tell me that I may know him, and that if he come again, I may entreat him to leave me not, but to stay with me forever. Oh my gosh. All right, so you would never believe it, but who was saying that? Who was saying that? That was in the Theological Germanica. Oh, Hugh of St. Victor's. I don't know what year that is, but if you look up, I heard this in Italian. This guy, Charlie Mackesy, and I were friends. He just got an Oscar for he's an artist. But anyway, so I was in his car. We were driving from York to London, and he started playing this tape, and I was like, what is this song? It was in Italian, right? And it's Mozart, The Marriage of Figaro, right? And it was this song, because I looked it up later in English, but it's exactly what we just read. It was like, tell me what love is, what can it be? What is this burning, yearning in me? Who holds the secret? What can it be? Like, I long for something. What can it be? This tender torment, tinged with delight. Like, I memorized it after that. And it's like, I could feel it in the car with Charlie. This is over 20 years ago as well. And I like wrote it down in something, some scrap of paper, like some plane ticket I had or something, and I remembered to look it up when I got back to America. Anyway, it's exactly like that. If you want to look up the lyrics, it's exactly what I just wrote. I wonder if Mozart had read that, or it's just that state. That's what I felt in the car with him, with Charlie. Not because of Charlie, but Charlie enters into the mystic state. You know, he does. Anyway, I wish you so much love. Thanks for being here. I think, I think this is exactly the right time. All right. Much love. See you next time.